you know, it was like, you know, a really nicer living experience being there. Okay. Do you remember much of the war?
Well, quite a bit of it, yeah.
Right, right.
Because the place I worked at down at Aston, I was in the office, and the factory was burned out. So they all had time off while the factory was rebuilt, and I had to carry on working. But I did join the Land Army when I was 17.
Right. Gosh.
So then I was away from Kingstanding, although I used to come home at weekends because I was only at Evesham.
Right. That must have been quite a long trip there. I mean, it's not a case of being able to hop onto the M42 in those days. Was it quite a long trip?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I wanted to go back to Droitwich after my father died, but there was no industry there. It wasn't until after the war that they got the... Yeah. So we stayed in Birmingham, and my mother always died here. Well, she didn't. She died at my brother's nursing home in the Isle of Wight eventually.
Right. And the Land Army, you know, I've heard a little bit about that. What kind of things did you do in the Land Army? Well,
I was in market gardening and field work.
Right. Tending
anything.
crops and
yeah.
Did you drive a tractor?
I did once, yes. Pulling trees up, which I enjoyed. Yes, it was... But during the war, my mother used to have soldiers' wives, because the pioneers were on this estate. They took this estate over, not this house, because this wasn't built, but the older houses they took over, and the pioneers and conscientious objectors were based here.
Right.
And a lot of them came to the Methodist Church, so Mother used to have the wives come down and stay during the war, you know. For
pioneers, that sounds quite a grand title.
No, they were the digger. You know, they used to dig the trenches. They were the lowest of the low, really.
Oh, right. Gosh. And the conscientious objectors as well.
Yeah.
Right. God. And what kind of work were they put to?
Well, medical work mainly.
Right. Okay. Sort of orderlies in hospital.
Yeah.
And things like that.
But of course I was away quite a bit during 1942 to 44, and so I didn't know a lot what was going on around.
Yeah, you said you only had weekends here.
But where I used to work, there were only two of us in the office, the manageress, and her house on Kingstanding Road. A bomb dropped in the front garden there.
Gosh.
And just blew all the grass out, and they had to move out and move to a house in George Frederick Road for temporary.
Yeah.
But someone else that I've known since, her sister was in a house just above Mrs. Wardle's, in the Anderson shelter with a baby and two friends, and the bomb fell directly on the shelter.
Really?
And all her sister found was a string of pearls, broken pearls.
Oh gosh, a direct hit.
And yet the other house, they were in the shelter and they were fine, it just fell in the front garden.
I don't think there were any military targets in Kingstanding.
There were only those two bombs and one in Haringey or Hurlingham. I never know which is which of those. And that demolished the house, but nobody was killed in.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned that. I'm going to meet a gentleman